Alicia starts a discussion about whether the Maga Bridge in Magenta City, which was built 30 years ago, is safe. Victor, who leads the Builder Guild, defends the bridge's strength and sees any doubts as attacks on the guild and the queen. Meanwhile, Lloyd remembers a future event where the bridge will collapse during an important battle, but he stays quiet about it. Instead, he questions the honesty of an official, suggesting that he is corrupt, which makes Alicia angry. She decides to punish him but later finds out the truth using a magic spell that reveals confessions. This spell uncovers the official's wrongdoing and also shows Victor's guilt. The guilty people are embarrassed in front of everyone, tied up and surrounded by crows. Alicia orders the workers in the kingdom to rebuild the bridge quickly. With the help of wizards who use magic to make the stone blocks lighter and with Lloyd's careful instructions, the bridge is completed in no time. Lloyd thinks about his hard work, remembering his challenges and how he has improved, while Javier and others compliment his abilities. The system rewards Lloyd with a big boost in RP, showing that the bridge construction was a big success. Alicia names the bridge Logjavi to honor Lloyd and his knight, Javier. She also gives Lloyd the title of Master Builder. While some people in the crowd disagree with her choice, Lloyd sees this project as a chance to pay off debts and gain recognition. Still, he is focused on his own dream of living a carefree and rich life. Alicia suggests they go back to the palace, but Lloyd plans to avoid her while he deals with other matters, like helping Julian's academy. He secretly calls his escape plan Operation Double Kill and agrees to go with her. The queen gives Lloyd a noble title and a piece of land, which makes the other nobles very upset. Noticing their anger, the queen realizes it will be hard to deal with their complaints. Lloyd thanks her but asks for something bigger. He wants her to take back the title and land and instead focus on fixing the Royal Academy. The queen is surprised and asks him to explain more. Lloyd shares that the academy is full of corruption, bullying, and bribery. Higher-ranked students mistreat those with lower ranks and teachers look the other way for money. Everyone is shocked when Lloyd shows evidence that Javier gathered over 4 months. Some nobles refuse to believe him, but the queen has a spell cast to reveal the truth, showing their lies. Angry, she commands the royal guards to punish those at fault and clean up the academy, causing a lot of confusion. Lloyd watches from afar, smiling himself. Out of nowhere, Sir Kyle, the best swordsman in the kingdom, comes to Lloyd with a message from the queen, inviting him to a banquet the next day. He also tells Lloyd that the queen knows about his plan to escape his duties for a more peaceful life. After Sir Kyle leaves, Lloyd talks with Javier, asking if he felt Kyle's presence, but Javier admits he didn't notice anything. Later, Julian thanks Lloyd for revealing Diego's actions, which makes him admire Lloyd even more. At the banquet, the queen repeats her invitation and tells Lloyd to enjoy the celebration in his honor. While Lloyd eats, he remembers something about a possible assassination attempt of the queen. After hearing Sir Kyle hints that the banquet will go on until the moon sets. The queen was lying down after a long day, feeling troubled by a headache. She thought she might have drunk too much. On top of that, she received reports that the enemy state Asfahan was moving troops in their western lands, which worried her. Although she thought the rough land made an attack unlikely, she couldn't shake the feeling that something bad was happening. Suddenly, her headache got worse and she realized she had been poisoned. Feeling dizzy but determined, she got up and called for help. Thankfully, Kyle walked into the room. However, her relief quickly turned to fear when Kyle revealed he had betrayed her, pulling out his sword and saying that her death was certain. Meanwhile, at the banquet, Lloyd felt that something was wrong. He quickly pulled Javier aside and gave him an important job, to hold off Kyle, the sword master, for as long as he could. Javier, with just a rod he found in the corridor, hurried to the queen's room with Lloyd. When they arrived, they saw dead soldiers lying everywhere. Inside the room, Kyle was about to attack the poisoned queen, but she managed to block his strike. Just as Kyle was getting ready to deliver a final blow, Javier stepped in, using a candlestick as his weapon. The two started a fierce fight, each one matching the other's strength. While they battled, Lloyd moved closer to the queen and used a special technique to absorb mana and heal her. At the same time, Kyle tried to unleash a strong aura sword, but Javier interrupted him by throwing the candlestick. This slowed Kyle down, but he fought back by injuring Javier and breaking the candlestick. Even though he was hurt, Javier stood firm, knowing that their survival depended on him. Just as it seemed Kyle would defeat Javier, he dodged Kyle's attack and called for Master Podon. Podon threw Javier's sword back to him, and with the sword in hand, Javier fired mana blasts. Kyle was taken aback and, unable to defend himself, decided to pull back. Meanwhile, Lloyd was struggling to absorb the queen's poisonous mana, coughing up blood, which made the queen worry about him. Despite his pain, Lloyd kept pushing himself to help her. Javier chased Kyle into the main hall, where Kyle tricked the royal guards into thinking Javier was the enemy. Surrounded by guards and Kyle, Javier fought bravely for the queen and Lloyd. He quickly defeated 3 guards at once, surprising Kyle. To fight back, Kyle created an aura sword. However, he seriously injured Javier with a strike, leaving him helpless on the floor as Kyle prepared to deliver a final blow. At the same time, Lloyd manages to absorb the poison but is in very bad shape. The queen tells him to gather all of his mana in his hand so she can cut off his arm to stop the poison from spreading. However, Lloyd refuses to lose his arm knowing it would affect his abilities. Instead, he uses his Mana Blast skill to push the poisonous mana into the air, showing his strength even though he's in a tough situation. Kyle feels a strong mana explosion, thinking it's from Lloyd. At the same time, Javier, feeling tired and scared, stands up, recalling the promise he made to his master. He tells Lloyd that he has learned the triple mana art, making him equal to Lloyd. He refuses to stay as Lloyd's protector, promising to get stronger and become a swordmaster in a year, all on his own. In the present, Kyle slices his aura sword into Javier's chest. To everyone's surprise, Javier survives, even though an ordinary person would have instantly vanished. Javier realizes that the mana from the sword is blending with his mana heart, making him stronger. Confused, Kyle pushes Javier aside and checks for signs of life, finding no breath or mana. Thinking Javier is dead, Kyle focuses on the queen. Out of nowhere, Javier stands up, calling forth a huge aura sword, which shocks Kyle. The sword becomes even bigger, and Javier launches a powerful attack that cuts off Kyle's arm. Kyle collapses, unable to fight back, and the royal guards rush in. Javier dares anyone brave enough to challenge a sword master. Lloyd was lying unconscious while the queen used her mana to try to save him, thinking someone as skilled as him shouldn't die. When Lloyd finally woke up, the system told him he had gained 2 new abilities, immunity to all poisons and supercharge, which lets him absorb a lot of mana. With a sinister grin, Lloyd made the queen angry and she instinctively hit him. He explained that he couldn't move because his mana was low, but then he used supercharge to take in all the mana around him, including from the queen. Realizing he was trying to save her, she willingly gave him her mana, bringing him back to life. Feeling light and full of energy, Lloyd noticed the weakened queen and promised to help save Javier. As they walked down the main corridor, they spotted Javier standing proudly with his aura sword after defeating Kyle. The queen admired Javier's strength and ordered the royal guards to lower their weapons. She explained that Kyle had planned to assassinate her and called Lloyd and Javier heroes. The queen decided to investigate everyone who was at the banquet. Lloyd asked Javier how he became a swordmaster, and Javier shared that he grew stronger by facing many dangers. At that moment, Lloyd learned from the system that he had unlocked a hidden reward, CP points earned during full moons, which could give him great power. The system joked with Lloyd about funny titles but wouldn't explain CP at first because of his arrogance. After pleading, Lloyd finally found out that CP could break the laws of physics, granting him amazing strength and abilities. Lloyd was confused about what ending spoiler meant. After everything that happened that day, he felt really tired. Julian asked if Lloyd knew who was behind the conspiracy, but Lloyd said he didn't. During the questioning, the queen's spell to make someone confess didn't work because the conspirators had magic to protect themselves. Since there was no progress, Lloyd realized he couldn't leave the royal capital yet. He understood that the event had happened 3 years earlier than he thought in this world, making his knowledge of the future almost useless. Remembering his ending spoiler ability, he hoped it might be helpful. Julian asked about Javier, and Lloyd explained that the queen wanted him after he became a sword master. Surprised, Julian thought the royal guards must have caught Kyle, but Lloyd said it was actually Javier who defeated him. Meanwhile, the queen praised Javier for his bravery and offered him the captain position of the royal guard. However, Javier declined, saying he was loyal to Baron Frontera. The queen warned him that turning it down could look like treason. Javier humbly asked for her understanding and wanted to say goodbye to the Baron. The queen admired his loyalty and agreed. Later, Javier assured Julian that he would always stay loyal to the Frontera family. That night, Lloyd checked his system and saw it was a full moon, perfect for earning CP for his 5 titles. Excited, he clicked a button and was suddenly sucked into a dark void. In a panic, he called for the system, and the scene changed to a burning city. Lloyd recognized the destroyed place. At a mansion, he found the dead Baron and Baroness, while his future self cried, regretting not saving them. Frightened, Lloyd saw a massive cloud of monsters approaching and asked the system about this scary vision of the future. Lloyd remembers a moment when Javier fought off a group of monsters with his aura sword. Although it looked like Javier quickly defeated them, more monsters kept coming. Back in the present, Lloyd asks the system about this vision, and it tells him to think about the dangers of ignoring it. He rushes to the queen and warns her about a disaster that could ruin the Cremona region. He says that the enemy nation Astfahan is behind this, using a monster domino plan to send creatures west in a harmful chain reaction. Even though she is unsure, the queen listens as Lloyd explains that he got this information from orc allies who warned him. When she asks more questions, he mentions that Javier taught him special magic to absorb mana. The queen, still a bit doubtful, decides to trust Lloyd completely using her power. She gives him 500 cavalrymen and 50 wizards to get ready for the upcoming crisis. In return, Lloyd promises to honor her by acknowledging her wisdom in handling the disaster. Lloyd, Javier, and Podong start their journey to the Frontera estate, hoping to get there in 5 days. When they arrive, they see monsters coming their way. Lloyd tells the farmers to stay inside and grabs a big pot lid, preparing to put his plan into action to protect the estate. A creature breaks into the Baron's mansion, scaring the maid as it tries to attack her. The Baroness saves her by using a wooden chair to kill the creature. However, more creatures start climbing through the windows. The Baroness takes the maid's hand to find a way out, but they see many creatures outside. The Baron checks on the Baroness and tells her to escape and join Sir Baron and the soldiers. When he opens the door, he finds even more creatures waiting outside. Meanwhile, Sir Baron gathers the men at the court residence to protect against the creatures. Remembering the Baron's orders to help the townsfolk first, he rushes to assist them. The orcs are also fighting hard, but are struggling. Just when hope begins to fade, a loud noise catches the creature's attention. Lloyd and Javier are making noise with pots and lids to lure the creatures away. Their plan is to guide the creatures along the estate's edge and into the Lacona estate. Despite the risk, Javier enjoys banging the lid and admires Lloyd more. Lloyd stays focused, knowing they must succeed in this tough situation. The Viscounty of Lacona is being attacked by creatures and the Viscount is scared. Suddenly, Lloyd and Javier burst into the mansion, making a lot of noise. Lloyd casually tells the Viscount not to forget to pay the water bills before moving on. Javier asks if their plan is to lure the creatures inside, but Lloyd brushes this off and admits he's just having fun, which makes Javier nervous. Lloyd yells at the creatures, saying that Captain Frontera is coming. Javier tells him to save his energy, but Lloyd insists he's shouting for attention and to make money, which worries Javier even more. As they enter Marshall's wetlands, they spot creatures in front of them. Javier swings his sword while Lloyd uses a lid as a shield. Together, they clear a path and gather the creatures in one place. However, their horses are too tired to go on. In a hurry, Lloyd jumps onto Javier's back and they run while being chased. Lloyd calls for help and Bangle and Hamming come to assist. Bangle uses a volcanic blast and Hamming fires a water cannon, taking down many creatures. After that, Lloyd and Javier use their powers to defeat even more. Tired, Javier notices thousands of creatures are still coming. Lloyd reassures him that they have backup plans. Podong calls together the orcs, mages, and royal cavalry, who quickly handle the remaining creatures. Javier wonders if the monster attacks are finally over, but Lloyd suggests that more waves could come, indicating the fight might not be finished yet.